Join me every month for the inspiration to find your finish line. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Find Your Finish Line, presented by Cherie Performance Series, the official medical supplier of IRONMAN, where you can find the far infrared kinesiology tape at Walmart, Ironman.com, and on Amazon. I'm Mike Riley, your host, and this podcast is not only about you being able to find your finish line at a race or event, but also in life. We'll talk to people from all walks of life that have jumped over those hurdles to get to the finish lines of today. And my guest has jumped over a lot of hurdles and gotten to a lot of finish lines. She is 77-year-old Cherie Gruenfeld. Hello, Cherie.
Hi, Mike.
How are you today?
Well, I'm happy to be here with you.
Well, you are considered KONA's golden girl. You've got yourself 28 races, Ironman races under your belt, 18 age group wins. You've won the world title in KONA an amazing 13 times. You've got 4 70.3 Ironman championship wins, and you're also a member of the USATriathlon Hall of Fame. And when someone goes through your resume like that, Cherie, does sometimes you sit back and go, wait a minute, did all those things happen? It seemed to happen so fast.
Yeah, that's for sure. You know, I listen to that kind of thing, and I can feel the memories of some of them and how those things felt. It's hard to believe that that's me and that it's actually happened. You know, I've been around a long time.
I know, but it's, you know, like anything that is a pillar and you're an institution in our sport and part of the Ironman family. I can't imagine after all the years that obviously I've been there and the other races that you wouldn't be involved with Ironman. You don't see any end in sight, do you?
I hope not.
Yeah. Not that. No. I didn't mean that kind of man, you know.
Well, you just called me an institution, you know.
Yeah. I meant the end of racing, you know.
Yeah, okay. You know, have been thinking about it, and everything I liked about the racing and the Ironman and all of that kind of thing. You know, I like the challenge. I like always having a goal. I love the people that are in the sport. So why would I ever want to get out of it? You know, so I kind of feel like as long as I can, I'm there.
Well, that's a great philosophy, because there's so many people of your generation that we all know that more or less, even in their 60s, I have friends in the 60s, have kind of given up on having those big goals that they set for themselves. Why do you think that happens?
Well, it's an easy thing to have happen, because you never forget how you used to be able to perform as you move through and you hit your 60s and 70s and so forth. And it's easy to get frustrated and say, you know, I just can no longer do this, instead of saying, I can no longer do this like I used to. But let's reset the goals and work on what is now realistic. And some people just are not willing or able to do that kind of thing.
Well, Cherie, we talked a little bit via text before the podcast, and you said you had done a pretty tough, hey, everybody, we're talking Cherie Gruenfeld, 77 years old, and she's texting me about a tough brick session she had today with a 6-mile run in there. Tell us about your training session today.
Well, you know, I'm going to Lava Man in a few weeks over in KONA.
KONA, yeah.
And that's an Olympic distance. So I thought maybe I should try a brick where I'm running the 6 miles off the bike. And so we have some canyons around here where because they have to look for good hills here in the desert. But in the canyons, you can find them. So I just did a 25-mile bike ride that had some good steep hills, and then a run that had in the canyon that had some good steep hills. And at 77, that kind of workout is a tough one. And, you know, I have memories of doing that kind of workout on that very same course 10 years ago wasn't that tough 10 years ago, but it is now.
Well, Cherie, there's many age groupers out there going, oh my gosh, I didn't do anything like that today. And she's 77. So don't feel so bad. Don't feel so bad. So the world of running and triathlon, it's not like it came into your life in your teenage years or your 20s or 30s. I mean, you were in your 40s when you've kind of discovered, I think it was the LA Marathon, and saw that. And did you not play sports when you were younger, or did you just have to go out and play with the boys because before Title IX? What was the story with that?
Well, that's exactly right. That was before Title IX. Excuse me. It was also a time when girls just didn't do sports. They, I guess some did, but basically girls didn't do sports. But as I was growing up, I grew up in a household with two brothers and parents that were not, didn't coddle me at all. When I said, there's nothing for me to do, they said, just get out and play with the boys. And so I got pretty roughed up playing with the boys. And then as I got into junior high and high school, when the boys were having organized sports, there was nothing for girls. So I really didn't have any opportunity to compete when I was in any kind of sport when I was younger. So when the running thing kind of hit, I wasn't a runner, but I saw the first LA Marathon on TV. I believe it was in 1986. And I didn't know anybody that ran, and I didn't run. And it was on a Sunday morning. And picture this, for a Sunday morning, we were lying in bed, reading the newspaper, eating sticky buns. That's how we spent our Sunday mornings.
Wait, sticky buns.
Sticky buns, yeah.
Those are like cholesterol times 82. You know that?
Yeah, like 3,000 calories for every one you ate, right? And I watched this. It was in LA, and so we were living in LA. I turned on the TV, and there it was. And I watched all these people doing this thing, and I'm sitting there eating sticky buns. And before it was over, I had committed that I was going to do that marathon the next year. So the next day I went out and bought a pair of shoes, and I bought a book called How to Run Your First Marathon, and I started running. And 5 months later, I was ready to run one, so I ran the Run Through the Redwood Forest.
Oh,
and
wow.
I did pretty well. And so I decided to keep doing it. And that started the marathon business. That was the first time I had ever competed, and I was loving it. And then made the transition to triathlon, to Ironman. I didn't do short triathlons. I just saw something about this Ironman thing and said, well, I got to run, so I want to do this. And that's in 92 when I was 48. That's when I did my first Ironman.
That's a great story. And you mentioned the LA Marathon. There is the finish line tape of the first LA Marathon right there, because
Really?
I announced the race they gave, and both winners' names are written, signed on there. I've just always kept that of the LA
Whoa.
Marathons. Such a great event. But do you think, Cherie, not having those organized sports as a young girl, a young woman in the early years, actually, when you look back at it today, maybe it was a little bit of an advantage for you because you didn't have any, you didn't get injured in a sport, whether you're playing soccer or basketball or whatever it is. And you all of a sudden came into your 40s and you were basically fit. Do you think that was kind of a blessing that you weren't in those organized sports?
Well, I don't know, I'd call it a blessing, but I think there were some advantages.
That choice of words wasn't good. You think maybe just because it happened that way that you stayed injury-free?
Yeah, I think that it did help, certainly, to keep me injury-free. I also think that part of it was that when you start a sport at 42, like I did with running, or 48, like I did with Ironman, you're a little bit wiser than you are when you're younger. And I went into both of those knowing that I needed to take care of my body if I wanted it to work well for me doing these kinds of things. And I think that that's an attitude that if I'd have started younger, I wouldn't have had, and I might have just trashed myself. So, the only injuries that I have really suffered have been from bike crashes rather than, injury because I overworked or whatever. So yeah, I think there was some advantage to it.
Stepping back just a little too with it must give you such great pleasure to see all the incredible women in our sport and in running and all sports after that Title IX and how it opened up the floodgates to it all. That's got to be something that you're very interested in, very proud of.
I'll tell you, I think that was the greatest piece of legislation since giving the women the vote. It just changed everything. And I'm sorry I wasn't there when it happened, but I'm glad that it happened and that everybody else. I remember at a women's breakfast in KONA one year, they had Karen Smyers speaking, and she was just knocked out. That was the first time that she had really realized. She heard all of us old ladies talking about, not being able to compete when we were younger. And she said she had never before really thought about what that meant. She had every opportunity in the world, and she rattled off all these sports that she played in school. And to think, here are all these old ladies sitting here that we never had any of that opportunity. So yeah, Title IX I'm all for it.
Beautiful, beautiful. But you've also had a strong work career. You've been one to always, especially after you started running marathons and doing Ironman, you kept up with your profession, your, executive marketing positions of major companies. And how were you able to juggle that strong work career and working out and training?
Well, I really didn't. When I started running marathons, the first thing I thought about is, I really like doing this. Can I do it? I was traveling a lot at that time. Can I really do it with all the traveling and all the work that I'm doing? And it was really pretty easy. You can pack a pair of shorts and shoes and you can run at any time of day in any city that you're in. And I was managing an organization, and so I could kind of set the time for meetings where I could get a run in first or after or whatever. So it worked out very easily when I did marathons. But when I decided that I wanted to try this Ironman thing, particularly since the only thing I had was the run, I didn't know anything about biking, and I could swim, but I wasn't really a swimmer. And I knew that I couldn't do this and work the kind of work that I was. So I really didn't start the training until after I had boldly made the decision and Lee supported me, that I was going to take a leave of absence. And I did, and started training the day that the leave of absence kicked in. So I have juggled a lot of things, but I've never had to juggle living and working in that corporate world like I was all those years.
And hasn't that leave of absence been since your 50s to today?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I actually took this leave of absence for it to be 6 months, and I was going to go train and do this Ironman. And at the end of the 6 months, when I crossed the first finish line, I ran right into Lee's arms and I said, man, I love this stuff. I'm never going back to work. And so then I had to go tell the people I was working with that I wasn't coming back. And when I told them, the CEO of the company said, we knew you weren't coming back. And I said, what do you mean you knew? I thought that was the agreement. I was coming back. You didn't fill my position or anything. And he said, well, the first month you were gone, you sat in on conference calls and you helped us out. The second month you were gone, you took our phone calls, but you weren't very enthusiastic. And he said, by the third month, you didn't really care about it as much anymore. So I guess it was time for me to move on.
I love it. He had you all figured out. Hold on, everyone. We'll be right back after a message from our sponsors. Even after 40 years on the microphone at thousands of events, welcoming hundreds of thousands of athletes to the finish lines, I am still in awe by the incredible endurance of each and every athlete and what you display. The physical exertion, the sweat, and the challenges you put your body through deserve a level of support that match your dedication. As the official medical supplier for the Ironman US Series, Cherie Performance Series lineups of wraps, tapes, bandages, supports, and braces give you, the serious athlete and weekend warriors alike, the optimal support needed to keep moving, including new far infrared kinesiology tape technology, which reduces energy made through body heat back to targeted areas to help you heal faster and enhance performance. So don't you let sprains and muscle pain hold you back. Recover smarter and shop the entire Curad Performance Series on Amazon. Cherie Gruenfeld, she's speaking of Lee Gruenfeld, her husband, who graciously wrote my book with me. But speaking of an author, you know, somebody else is an author right there. Cherie Gruenfeld with her book I've got on my shelf, Become an Ironman. When you did the first Kona, and that was, what year was that?
92.
In 92. I missed you that year, didn't I? Was that?
No, you missed calling me in?
Yeah. What year?
So.
What year was it that I missed you and Lee yelled at me?
Oh, I remember that. I don't remember, but it wasn't the first because.
Yeah, it wasn't the first. So.
Yeah, I heard this voice and I thought, I didn't realize you were saying that to everybody. And I thought, how does this guy know me?
Yeah, funny. I know everybody. Isn't that crazy? Well, and after that first Kona, you know, as so many are, Cherie, they just become hooked. It's an infection that just invades you in such a good way. Did you always know from the time you finished Kona the first time that this was going to be your path and your sport the rest of your life?
I wouldn't say I knew that, but like I said, when I finished and ran into Lee's arms, at that point, I was already thinking that I knew how I could go faster the next time. So I was definitely hooked to keep going. I think if somebody had told me at that moment that 30 years later, I would still be doing this kind of thing, I would have poo-pooed that. I wouldn't have thought that that was going to happen. But I definitely knew that I was in for a while.
Well, like all age groupers, you've had setbacks. As you mentioned earlier, bike crashes. I can remember Lee calling me and telling me, and it wasn't long before the Kona race one year that you broke your collarbone. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, she won't be in Kona. And you go through the story. How long was it before Kona? Because all I know is you were at the start line.
Well, I said that was the one. It wasn't a collarbone. It was a rib. It was
rib. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we had gotten to Kona, and I was going out for a run the first day we were there, and was just not paying attention or talking to somebody. I don't remember what, but I was walking through a little walkway to get out to the road for a run, and there was a tree root there, and I just tripped on the tree root. It wasn't a bad fall, but I smacked against a tree right there, and I could hardly walk to get up from that. So Lee was convinced that I'd never be able to race. And I had no idea how I was going to race, but I did. It was certainly not my best race. It was the first time in 17 years, I remember, or 17 races there, that I didn't even make the podium. So it was a rugged one, but I was still glad I did it.
But that's what, you know, the question arises, and I know what people out there are thinking. First of all, why you were hurt? Could you have gotten hurt worse? But what drives Cherie Gruenfeld to do that? What do you think is in you to pick yourself up and go, you know what, damn it, I'm going to do this? What is that, Cherie?
I don't know for sure. My entire life, whether I was in sports or not, I have been driven by goals. My parents will tell you a story about when I was in the 5th grade, and over Thanksgiving, I had a project I wanted to do, and don't bother me with turkey and all this stuff. I'm doing this project. And I don't know where that came from, but that's kind of my MO. It has been my entire life. And it served me pretty well, so I've never tried to change it very much. But that's truly it. If I've got something that I set out to do, unless I'm dead, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. At least that's been the case in the past. We'll see.
Yeah. And that's why I truly wanted to have you on the podcast, because you hear, especially the last 2.5 years, as you know, Cherie, with the pandemic and everything, it's amazing how many excuses come out of people's mouths and how many negativities are out there that you almost don't want to hear. Do you think that the positive side of people has a tough time to come out during tougher times?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that the positive side of people, if people have a strong positive side, it's going to come out when they're being challenged with some real tough times. If people don't necessarily, there are people that just don't, if they are presented with a situation, they don't go for the positive first. They go for the negative first. And in that case, then something like the pandemic is real tough on people like that, because it was those couple of years, it was tough to find the positive. So I think that's what got to a lot of people, is they just weren't able to dig through the negative and get to the positive, try and pull something out of it. But that sounds like I know something about what I'm talking about, and I really don't. So
you do. Experience is everything, and some people say getting older is a part of life that you look forward to because you've made mistakes before. What is do you have a philosophy on age, on getting older?
I sure do. I think everyone's kind of forced to, because it's going to happen to all of us. Yeah. Since I moved into the old category, which has been a lot of years now.
When was that? When do you think? I don't think you're in the old category. You'd kick my ass out there. I mean, geez.
There's no fighting it. I'm in the old category. But I've always understood that you have to age. It happens. But you don't have to get old. And so I think if you kind of keep trying to, it's a delicate balance. When I'm speaking now about the athletic part of it, it's a really delicate balance to keep pushing yourself. Because if you just say, I'm older now, I can't go that hard, then you can't. But if you keep pushing yourself, trying, you're going to go better than if you didn't push yourself. But if you expect to meet those goals that you used to meet, even 5 years ago at an age like mine, you're just going to be disappointed. It's going to be awful because it's not realistic. So you have to kind of get in the middle there where you're still pushing and trying, but understanding that you got to have goals that are reasonable, and then be satisfied when you accomplish those goals and not think about, well, man, that's an hour slower than I used to be. So it's tough. It's really frustrating and tough. But the aging thing is there. And I'll tell you something else, Mike, is that this sport, to succeed in it, you need physical strength. But you also need, and perhaps even more, you need mental strength. The physical strength is going to go. The mental strength doesn't have to. There is no reason that we have to lose our mental strength. So if you keep that, that's going to keep pushing you to try and keep on doing better, or just hanging on. I don't know if doing better is ever going to happen, but just hanging on. But it is definitely frustrating.
And there is always so much talk about recovery, and as we get older, even in the 40s and 50s, some of the workouts you do, but the recovery time is longer. Do you find that a tougher part of your training regimen? Like, oh my gosh, I did the brick today, and I know what I'm going to be able to do tomorrow or not be able to do tomorrow because of recovery.
I wouldn't say it's an adjustment that you have to make. And sometimes I made the adjustment some time ago, so I'm over it now. I understand about needing the recovery, and I do it. But yeah, in the beginning, when you start to need more recovery, it is hard to reconcile that you can't do 2 or 3 big days back to back and expect to do it with quality any longer.
Right, right.
But that recovery is really key. And I'll tell you another thing. It's along those same lines, kind of, is I think as we get older, that one of the keys to sticking with it and staying in and still getting some kind of good performance is strength. And because we've got the endurance, that's been built up from all these years, but we're starting to slow down. But if you can stay strong, you have a chance of still being able to run well or do whatever well in this sport. And so I am just, the 3 most important workouts I do during the week are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday strength work. I got a trainer who kills me for 30 minutes, 3 times a week, and she's making me stronger. And I think that that's paying off real big, real big.
Yeah, dividends. That's fantastic. Yeah. Cherie, what of our female professionals in the sport, which ones do you admire? Which ones do you look at and say, wow, that's just talent, or you love how they live life? Or you have your favorites out there?
Well, that's a good question. You know, I've been through so many different generations of those pros, and I knew the old generation, Paula and Aaron and Karen Smyers and all those. And I really loved that whole generation because they were learning how this sport worked and how well they could do it and that kind of thing. And it was an inclusive family kind of thing. And that I found very comfortable, and I really liked it. So I really admired all of those young people that were driving this sport at that time. The newer generations, I certainly don't feel like I know them as well. Mirinda Carfrey and Tim O'Donnell are 2 of my favorites. I think that they not only have done so much for the sport, they continue to. They've lived they are living a real life with all the ups and downs of real life, but they're getting through it and doing well. And I have great admiration for them. I look at Lucy Charles and I just drool. I think she's got so much going for her, and I can't wait to see her in the next few years, because I think she's really going to break out in the next few years. And that's just pure admiration on my part for her.
Agree. And it's interesting because, with St. George coming up, the World Championships in May, that's what everybody's looking for, especially on the women's side and the men's side, barn burner of a race. And you're not going to compete in St. George, are you?
No.
Okay.
No.
What is on the schedule this year? Do you have one set besides the Lava Man?
So far, I've got a pretty light schedule compared to what I've done in the past, but I'm doing Lava Man, and then I'm doing Honu 70.3. I have nothing planned right now for the summer, but I will add at least 1 or 2 races during the summer. And I'm on the books for KONA in October. But as I mentioned when we talked this morning, I'm not fully committed to KONA in October. I'm committed to going there. I'm not committed to racing there yet. The reason for that is that, I retired from Ironman racing in 2015.
Right.
And I did that because I had always said that I would race, and I was asked this question a lot: how long are you going to keep doing this? And the answer was very firm in my mind: I'm going to keep racing Ironman races until the training is no longer fun. I'm not enjoying the training, or that I'm just racing against the clock. I'm not able to really race it. I'm just trying to beat the deadlines. And in 2015, I realized on a day out here in the desert where I train, It was 118 degrees. A fireman actually stopped me and said, I'm going to follow you. Because I said, I'm okay. You don't need, I'm okay. He was worried about me. And he said, I'm going to follow you home because you just shouldn't be out in this stuff. And I realized that I was not enjoying this training. I was just struggling through it. So I said then, if I can have a race in 2015 that I'm proud of, I'm walking away. And I did, and I walked away, and I was as happy about it as could possibly be. And just been racing 70.3 since. In 2019, I had no desire to go back to Kona. In 2019, I was turning 75. And there is a record, Sister Madonna, in the 75, 79. And I kept looking at that, and I thought, I think I could break that.
That competitive spirit, yeah. I know it came out in you. The old analogy of the new age group. So it clicked for you, didn't it?
It did. And so I said, that's it. I'm going back 1 year. And then I qualified, and I was all set to go. And then in July, I had a medical issue. And so that year was off the books. So I was ready to go again in 2020. And I thought, well, I'm a year older, but I still think I can do it. So I'm going to go. And I was prepared to qualify, but we all know what happened in 2020. So then now my opportunity, it was either St. George or Kona. I don't have the desire to just do another Ironman. I have the desire to do one more Kona. So St. George was not a draw for me at all, even though I like racing the 70.3s there. So I said, 2022 in Kona, I'm 78. It's a far different feel. The years between 75 and 78 have taken their toll. I can feel those 3 years in my performances. So I don't know how things would go in Kona. But, and I don't know how the training, I just don't know if I'm ready to put my body through another summer of intense training, because our deserts here are, 115 degrees all summer long, to do it one more time. But I have a no-go date of when I'm going to make the decision. And what's drawing me to go is that I believe that I might spend the rest of my life asking what if I didn't go. If I stay home and don't even try and live the rest of my life wondering, what if you had tried? How would you have done? I'm not sure I can live with that. So I don't know if I'm going to say yes or no on any given day,
Okay, well,
we'll see. So stand by.
Thank you for your honesty with that. And although people should live with the philosophy of no regrets, because then they do, jump off that cliff and find out what they're really made of and what they can do. And I understand that in you completely, Cherie. So it wouldn't surprise me to see you at the start line in Kona, but that's completely up to you. But I'll be waiting. I'll just tell you, I'm going to be on the pier. I'll be out there somewhere. And just think, you get the race on Thursday, and then you can just yell at everybody on Saturday at the men's race.
That's right.
You can be laughing at all of us still working. You're just waving.
That's right. Well, for sure, if I do it, I want you on the microphone when I come in.
I guarantee it. I guarantee it. But then all of a sudden, I know you're going to turn 80 and we're going to have the same conversation. Okay, Mike.
No, we're not.
80 to 84 age division.
No. You know who I admire is, the Japanese fellow.
Hiromi. Hiromi Anadu.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's talking about at 90, and he's just as bound determined to go as possible. What a guy.
He's just a fire plug, isn't he? It's just something else watching him. Yeah. Cherie, you're a passionate person. You're one that loves life, but you also love helping people. And for the last 17 years, you started an organization 17 years ago called Exceeding Expectations. You call them your EE kids. And back 17 years ago, you had like 12 or 13 kids do a little mini triathlon because you gave a talk out in, I think it was Riverside County, and to some underprivileged kids. And all you wanted to do was help. Exceeding Expectations has to be something that fills your heart and soul. But to be able to see what you're doing for the kids, it's beyond words. Why don't you take us through that?
Well, you're absolutely right. This is my real passion, and not for nothing, but it's been 21 years.
Oh my goodness. Sorry about that.
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, it was pure serendipity. I didn't have this thing that said, I need to help these kids or I need to help people. I was invited to speak at a school in San Bernardino. And I spoke to these kids. I talked to them about setting goals, and then showed them a little video of me doing Ironman, and showed them what it felt like to accomplish a goal after you'd really worked hard on it. And they were just a great audience. We had a good time during this. And afterwards, I said to the teacher, there's a little triathlon in a neighboring city here coming up. And if anybody wants to try it, I'd be happy to help them. I envisioned a couple of kids who had bikes, who had parents. I should have known better. So the next day, the teacher talked to these kids and said that I had made this offer and who wanted to do this, and 200 hands shot up.
Oh my gosh.
So she called me in a panic and said, what do you want to do? So I said, have anybody that's interested come to the school on Saturday, and I'll select a group of kids. And there weren't 200 on Saturday, but there were a lot of kids and not a parent in sight. And we selected 12 kids, and I started training them. I started training them on the bike. I'm not sure why, because it would have been easier on the run, but I got some bikes from fellow triathletes and started training them on the bike. We took them to the little triathlon, and I got people to swim for them and run for them. And they loved it. They did a great job. They wanted to do it again. So I trained them to do the bike and the run. They did it again. They loved it. They said they want to do it again. And I said, okay, now you got to swim. Well, that's when the whole thing almost fell apart, because these kids didn't swim. They didn't have pools. They lived 60 miles from the ocean. Most of them had never seen the ocean, and they were terrified of water. So I told them, the finish line is through the water. You climb on my back, you get in my arms, however you do it, I'll get you to the finish line. And I nearly drowned that day with the kids because I panicked in the water, but we got them all through. And from that point on, we were doing triathlons, with little sprint triathlons with these kids. And that was fine. It was helpful. But one day, a few months later, in the car, I had some bunch of kids taking them home from someplace, talking to them about going to college. And one of these kids said to me these exact words. He said, Cherie, why are you talking to us about this? That's for other kids. It's not for us. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I realized that what we were doing was good, but it wasn't solving any real problems. And so that's when I realized that our goal had to be to get these kids to understand, and their parents or the adults in their life to understand, that education was for them if they were willing to work for it. So that became the goal, is to get all of these kids educated. And what that meant is that we had to be financially supportive of that, because they couldn't get into college on their own. So anyway, that became the beginning of Exceeding Expectations. And just to flash forward 21 years, we have kids that have graduated from college. Some of those same kids are still in the general area, and they work with us, they mentor the younger kids. And every single kid now, and many parents, understand that Exceeding Expectation is an organization that will help their kids get educated. And it's just, I get more out of it than I can possibly give to these kids, but it's the love of my life, other than my husband.
And I know you and Lee, the giving of your time, it's just amazing. And you're paying it forward. I remember my brother Don and I, when we came to the Marine Corps Recruit Depot, when one of your EE kids graduated from boot camp in the Marine Corps, and then didn't he make he had a bit of his life through the Marine Corps. Was it Hector was his name, or Oscar?
No, Edgar.
Edgar.
Mm-hmm.
Edgar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a really nice short career because he ended up in Japan, where he had a nice gig there. But he had a wife, and they had several kids. And the wife and the family just was not happy with all the time that he spent away. So he got out, and he's moved back. He's in the San Bernardino general area, and he has a nice job, and the family is happy. I don't think he's as happy as he was when he was in the Marines, but he's happy. But we now have a second one in the Marines. Oh. Yeah, he graduated from boot camp, and the only problem he had in boot camp was he got dinged a couple of times for smiling when he shouldn't have been smiling. This is a great kid. So he's doing real well now.
Yeah, we'll forgive him for that on the outside world, but the Marine world, they won't forgive him.
That's right. That's right.
Cherie, you've never been one to hold back your opinion on anything, and which I love. Give us how you think the sport of triathlon is doing overall, with everything involved, whether it's inclusivity, whether it's a male, female, whether it's enough races or the price entry fees. How do you think the sport's doing?
Gosh, that's a big question. Generally, I think they're doing well. I think that they're very well aware that we have, from the time it started until fairly recently, not been an inclusive sport. And they're very well aware of that, and they're doing better, much better, and trying hard to keep it inclusive, to make it inclusive. And it's difficult to do because it's an expensive sport. It's not one that's out in the schools that people can get experience there and get help there. So it's a tough one. I think as far as the females, I know that there's been problems as far as race money and prize money and that kind of thing over the years, which clearly hasn't affected me, but it's certainly clear that the women are racing the same thing that the men are, and that they're not. It has nothing to do with drawing bigger crowds or smaller crowds, and so they should obviously be treated the same. From my perspective, it doesn't look to me like it's a serious problem, but then I'm not in that realm where I would know how serious the problem was, to tell you the truth. I think that the pandemic was really tough on the sport, but I support how they handled the thing. I think that there was just no easy answers as far as the cancellation of races, and some people just went crazy because they didn't get all their money back and all that kind of thing. I don't think there was an answer that would have satisfied people. And I think that the way that they are coming back, from what I've seen, is astonishing. I think that they're doing I raced Honu last June, so June of 21, and I felt as safe and protected and like it was just like old times as you could possibly be during that time. And I think that's because of the organization. So in my book, I'd give them a good grade.
Yeah, and it's going to be a full slate of races this season, as you know, which we're all looking forward to. For goodness sakes, Cherie, when you get a little older, people always want to ask your opinion of things, and it's great giving advice because you've made some mistakes, and you don't want other people to make those mistakes. So, what advice would you give to our age group athletes out there on how to approach both racing and life with a positive attitude? What advice would you give to them?
Well, I don't know that I'm qualified to.
Yes, you are. Yes,
never stopped me before.
Yeah.
I feel pretty strongly about this, that you need a balance. This sport that we do is important to us. When we go out and race it, we want to win. We want to do well. But so what if we don't? That's not the most important thing. I do feel that, although I love triathletes generally, I just think that some of us tend to take it too seriously and believe that this is life and death stuff for us. and then look around you. This is nothing. It's just a thing we do. It's something that we enjoy. It's something that drives us. So it's important to us. But look at your life. There are so many other things that are important to us, and those are the things that really count. So I think that my advice would always be to people is just put it in perspective. Don't let it just take over your life.
I agree. It's interesting how when something comes into your life and it's a very positive side of your life, people have a tendency to push away some other things, and thus they lose balance. So even though they're a great triathlete, they may end up not being a great father or brother or sister or mother, So the balance thing is absolutely everything. So I know you and Lee have listened to the podcast, and my last question, I call it tri-table racing. It comes out of the Baja 1000 racing. That, as you know, Rose and I have friends that race down in the Baja in their cars and everything. And afterwards, they sit around the table, and it's called table racing. They reminisce about the event, what happened, or reminisce about other events. So this is tri-table racing. Pick out any event or any time in your career of an event or something happened in the event, funny or sad, that you want to reminisce with us about, sitting down at the table and chatting it out.
Whoa, I should have thought this one through first.
Yeah, I don't like anybody having the time to think it through. It's just off the top of your head.
Let's talk about in 2015. And I already told you this was the time I was going to Kona. I wanted a race that I would be proud of in order to quit, in order to call it a day of Ironman racing. I didn't know at the time exactly what it meant, what a race that I would be proud of would mean. I thought it involved probably winning, but there's more than that. I won some races that I liked them and I liked winning, but I wouldn't say I was really proud of them. So I was looking for something I was proud of. And I had some competition. Natalie Grabau, who's a lovely lady, she had raced with me in Kona for a lot of years. And I had always been able to beat her. She was a good competitor, but had never taken it from me. So I looked at her as my main competitor. There were others there too, but I looked at her as my main competitor. And in that race, I got out of the water before she did. I heard you calling her out of the water as I was starting on my bike. So I knew I was ahead of her there. And then she's a strong biker. And she passed me maybe mile 40 on the bike. And I never saw her again. So, she had a good lead. And but
did you try, Cherie? Not to start. Did you try staying with her and said, "Oh, I need to hook on" or anything like that? No.
No, I didn't. I didn't. My racing in Ironman has usually been when I see something like that, and this will certainly be not my MO if I go back again, but I had a strong run, and I knew I figured approximately how far ahead she would be of me. And I wasn't worried. I thought I can catch her on the run. So no, I didn't. I took note of where she was. I did see her. I shouldn't say she was completely out of sight. I did see her a couple of times during the rest of the race. So I knew she was, not completely out of reach. But so when I started the run, she was ahead of me, and you go down Alihi first, and I didn't see her. I didn't know what she was wearing, so and people look different, and you get unfocused sometimes. So I thought maybe I just missed her, but I figured I should have seen her coming back as I was going out. And I had Dave Scott joined me Larry Lee had told everybody that I was having to catch up with, that I was behind and I needed to catch up. And so at one point, Dave Scott joined me for 2 or 3 steps to tell me where she was. And at one time, Mark Allen join me for 2 or 3 steps to tell me, you're doing fine, just keep going.
Not bad company
And
out there.
no. And I got to the energy lab, and Lee's was standing there, and he said, I don't remember what he said, how far, but she's down there. Well, by that time it was dark, and I didn't know precisely what she was wearing. And when I was turned around and to come out of the energy lab, I saw this woman that I thought was Natalie, and I passed her. So I thought, this is good. Now I'm ahead. If I can keep this pace, I got this, because I know she's not going to speed up, and I can keep the pace. So I was feeling comfortable. I got to the top of the energy lab, and Lee was there, and he said, and pointed, so many minutes ahead. And all of a sudden my heart sank, and I thought, whoa, wait a minute, what is this? I thought I was ahead of her. He said, no, she's ahead of you. So I just kept running. And the reason that I point this out, that this is such a special moment to me, is because when I look back on this day, I could easily have simply panicked and lost my run, or I could have just given up. I could have done a lot of things, but I just kept moving at the same pace. Like my game plan was just fine. I stayed very, very calm. Just before the big hill coming into town to go down Polani Hill, a friend, jumped out on the road in front of me and said, she's right up there. And I looked, and Natalie was in the light at the top of the hill. And so I just cranked it on, and I passed her before she'd taken another 5 steps, I guess, and ran down the hill. Lee was at the bottom of the hill just going ape crazy, because he was expecting to see Natalie first and then to see me just totally dejected. And there it was me, and I was running like a madman, and came into the finish line like 3 or 4 minutes ahead of her. And she was so lovely. For me, that was the first time that I thought all day long, I'm so glad I won, because now I don't have to come back again and race this thing. And she was just lovely she thought she had that race won, and she had every reason to believe she had that race won. And to get passed on that hill that's really a toughie to take. And she said, my head said go, and my body just couldn't. And I just can imagine how awful that was for her. But she was just lovely about it. And we hung around for a while. We went and got a massage together, and we had something to eat together. And we got her with her husband. And so that to me was the race that I was proud of. It meant I could stop doing Ironman races and be so happy with it that I could come back the next year and watch and be perfectly happy. And Natalie won the next year, which made me really happy.
Yeah, she did.
So, yeah.
And you know what? Maybe in 2022 in October, we can see another proud Cherie Gruenfeld moment. You never know. I'm just saying.
I would hope so.
Cherie, thank you so very much for your time. You are so lovely to be. We're honored and for you to be a part of our sport. You're a leader. You're a person that inspires others just by your actions, but your words are so powerful. So thank you very much for all you do. And I just can't imagine, a racing world that you're not out there at the start line because you retired, so to speak. So hopefully that'll never happen.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Cherie. And if you want to, Cherie's got her own website, at CherieGruenfeld.com, plus the eefoundation.org if you'd like to know more about Exceeding Expectations, Cherie's organization. Go to eefoundation.org and find out all about it there. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you to Curad Performance Series, the official medical supplier of Ironman, where you can find at Amazon, at Walmart, on Ironman.com. And if you enjoyed the show, give us a review if you would. We'd love to hear from you. You can pick us up everywhere on Spotify, Overcast, or on my website, MikeRiley.net. Thank you very much, everybody. And like Cherie says, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't be so engrossed in what you're doing, you forget about the good things in life. So take care of yourselves out there, everybody. My warmest aloha.